Okay, last time we did this, right? We did this paint thing that painted a panel. When we override the paint, we have more control over how this panel is going to be designed, how it is going to be painted on the screen, because whatever you see is painted on the screen. So each one of these components has a paint method that shows how this button should show up on the screen, so it will paint it. And if you would like to change the way something appears on the screen, that's why we override the paint. However, there are two types of painting. That's what I would like to talk about. There's this paint here, and there's paint component. Now both of these are going to work in our case, but there's a small difference between this paint and paint component. For our in this scenario, it doesn't make any difference, but there will be some differences if, for example, notice that this is a panel, right? In a panel I can put some buttons, I can put other things inside of a panel, because a panel is a component that is also a container. I can put things in it. Now when you paint the component, you're only painting the component itself. So if it has some other things that are inside, it's not going to affect that. It's going to leave them as they are. But if you do the paint, this one, without the paint component, you're discarding whatever it's inside. You're just painting the whole thing. That's the idea behind that. So anyways, for us, for this example, the paint is going to be enough for us to work with this to change the way this is going to show up, because now I'm showing up this to be changed. Now I did something, is that this my panel extends the J panel, and then I just create this my panel drawing, and inside of that I just add it to the center. So this is the one that I'm adding, and you see I set the background color to be seen here, but you know what, I can force that to be changed to be done inside here. Now I'd like to ask you, what's the difference if I put it here or if I put it outside?
With the last two, you can't change it.
Now if I put it here,
You can't change it.
I can change it later on. Actually, no. You want to say something? The same thing? Now look, I put it in the paint. Now which means now if I come back here and I put the set background color to be red. Now if I run this thing, I'm not going to be seeing it red. Why? Because here I changed something on the properties, but when I draw it on the screen, this is going to be executed. And among the things that is going to be executed, regardless of what kind of color you selected, I'm going to change it to this color. So this paint here is the one that controls how things look. So if I put something here, it's going to override what was there before. So, but if I remove this one, now it's possible to someone to have to make it red, or to make it any color, because I give the possibility now to other people to change the way it looks. But if I put it inside here, now regardless of what you choose the color to change, every time you paint, this component is going to be drawn on the screen. I'm going to set the background to be this color. So that's why it's going to discard whatever you change. What I'm trying to say is that this paint here controls the way it looks. So if you make a change to something here, like for example the background color, if I put it here, I'm forcing the background color not to be able to be changed at all. But if I put it outside, I'm allowing it to be changed because the user can change it. But if I put something here that changes here, it cannot be changed from outside, because once I draw the control on the screen, I'm going to see these. So once I see them, I'm just seeing these things. You remember the discussion that we had with this size? Actually what I did, I just created a new variable that I called offset, and it's just half of the circle, and whatever the size of the circle is, so it's going to allow me to change the circle size if I want to, something like if I can make it grow or shrink. If I don't want to make this here, I can just maybe change it somewhere else. I can make this to be, for example, here, like a instance variable. That's going to be instance variable of this my panel. So this is the size of this circle. Now this is something now that can be changed outside. What do you mean by outside? Outside of this class, inside here, for example. I can set, I can just immediately set the size of the circle to be something. Now notice if I put this to be 100 now, what is going to happen? When I'm drawing this, am I going to see, I mean, this is not the best way to do things. I'm going to add a constructor just to, and yeah. You know what? I'm just going to make this. In the constructor, I'm going to make the size, which means now every time you're going to create a new drawing panel, you just need to mention what is the size of your circle. So this way, every time when you start, this 50 is going to be my size of the circle. And if I change it with 70 or 75 or whatever, so it's going to be slightly bigger and so on. Is that okay?
It will create the size inside the panel.
That's what I did. This is the size. Actually, I don't. Well, I just used it here, like the size of a circle inside of the class. So it's an instance variable. And then I created a constructor that needs this value to be stored. And once I have that value, I'm going to use it to first of all display the circle, and also I'm using it to calculate the offset, which is half of that circle, so I can just move it and position it correctly. If you remember the discussion, if you don't, just have a look at the video and then just discussion how things are drawn on the screen, and how this X and Y are not actually the center of the circle, but the top left corner of some kind of a imaginary rectangle, or in this case a square, where inside of it the circle is going to be drawn. So that's why I'm doing this offset to show it to be really in the middle. But if I'm not doing this, so for example, I'm just putting this to be 0. Now that means I'm not changing anything. If it's 0, it's going to show not exactly at the center, because this is the center. But what is exactly at the center is this top left corner of this imaginary square that holds the circle in it. So in order to get it centered, I just get back, I subtract half of that circle, so it just shows up clearly in the center. Okay, this being said, I'd like these buttons to be now moving this circle. Now it's kind of, it seems fancy, but it's very easy. Now first of all, what I need to do is just create some action listeners to those buttons. So let's say now I'm looking for the buttons, where here they are. Now for the button right, I'm just going to add action listener, which is a new action listener. And then inside of here, what should I do? Now in order for me to move that circle, let's say I wanted to move right. If I click right, what should happen? It should move right. First of all, I need to decide, okay, by how much it is going to move. Because remember, now this is going to be some kind of a axis where this is y and this is x. Now this is 0. So my circle is somewhere in the middle here. Now if I want to move it to the right, I need to mention, okay, by how much? And let's say if I move by 10, right? You wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, moving it. We're moving the top left corner of it, the center, or moving the center of the circle?
We're moving the top left corner again.
Okay.
Yes, because this is what we are going to be moving. So when we're moving this, we move it by 10, and when it's going to draw it here. So which one are we changing? Now, because we're moving to the right, the x changes, the y doesn't. So basically what we should do is that whatever the x was, we need to add to it this 10, because we said that the speed is going to be the 10, or we can change the speed to something else, but let's make it 10. So that's what we're going to be doing. But before we can do that, we need to be able to access those x and y, the variables x and y. Now I don't have access to those because now x and y are just instance variables that are inside here. So I'm not going to allow them to be just here. What I'm going to do, to be able to change them from outside, I'm just going to make them x and y. Now I'm making them private, but because this is an inner class, I can have access to those private variables. From where? Well, from here, for example. Now once I click on this, what I should do now, I should go for this drawing panel, look for the x, and then add 10 to it. Okay.
Can you go to a method that made drawing panel?
I'm sorry?
Can you go to the method?
The method?
Yes, that's called made drawing.
Where do you see that? I don't.
Yes, when you change x plus equal 10.
This one?
Yes.
You would like to see the method that changes the math drawing panel. That's what I'm not understanding the question.
The method that when you put it inside the.
This is there's no method in here. I'm just changing a variable.
How do you get the drawing panel?
How to draw the panel? I'm drawing it here in the paint. In this method that I override the paint that's inside this my panel.
Did you create method or just inside the key panel?
No, this is the method that that draws this circle. I mean, I'm not sure to understand your question actually, but the one that draws this is this, right? Because this is where I have this fill oval, right?
And use it like type private my panel drawing panel like innocent variable.
Instance variable? Which instance variable?
Private my panel.
Okay, yes, here. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, this is just an inner class, right? Because look, this is just a class that defines my panel. Because this my panel actually it doesn't have to be an inner class. I can have it as a class on its own. Let me just do something else. Maybe it should. But if it's a class on its own, I will lose the ability to have access to the instance variables because now they are not going to be able to be accessed. But that's fine. You want to keep it like this? But the idea is that this is like a type that is extended in the JPanel, and the code that displays it is here, is in the paint. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take these. This offset is only used for this. So when I'm initializing, I'm just initializing this here, so I don't have to. So I'll just keep this to a minimum. This is just to prepare for the x and y to have a value. And once I have those values, I just do this. I set the background to every time I paint, I'm ensuring that the background is this. And then I get the color to be red. And then I draw this oval with the x and y that I just calculated. And then the circle, this is the size of the circle that it was mentioned. Now the thing that I did now is that every time I click on the button right, this panel, inside of it, the x is going to be increased by 10. So which means now it should be moving to the right.
You open two.
Okay, but even though the second one, why is it here?
Can you click the right?
Move the offset. The offset and the
What did they do?
offset from the paint graphics.
Now this offset is the size of the circle divided by 2. So you think maybe because I moved this that this is why I have that problem? Let's put it back. Okay. And then run again. It is. But why is it a problem? If I take this, for example, and put it inside the constructor, once I create the object, I just take the offset, which is the size of the circle divided by 2. But then this is not known here anyways. It doesn't. What's the problem with this by taking this here? The problem is this get size. At this time, the get size is not the same as when it's here. Because remember when the first time when we created the frame, just by extending a frame and then we ran it. You remember what was the size of the window? It was really kind of the smallest thing that you can see. And then we had to make it bigger. Then when we change the size, then it shows up to the right size. So now this thing here, because now the size is going to be something different, it just gets calculated differently. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just take it back here. I can fix it, but I don't want to spend too much time trying to fix it, so I'm just going to leave it here. Now when I do this, once it tries to draw this thing, it just takes the right size where it should be and then it's designing. But once I just call the constructor, at that time the size is 0 probably. That's why I get it like to be something here. But let's not lose the focus here. If I click on the right, I would like to see it moving, but I don't. I put 10.
In the next one.
But I need to do something else. If you change something, if you'd like it to, because now it's drawn, it's shown on the screen. If I change the X, I want to draw it again. So it was some values has changed, but I need to repaint it, or just, you know what, tell the whole frame to repaint, because repaint is some kind of a method that is going to repaint the whole thing, or maybe just part of it. Okay, if I just do this and repaint, let's see if it's going to work. By clicking here, no, it doesn't. I need to force probably the repainting of the whole thing. Now by doing this, it still doesn't work. Why is it not working? Now I did not expect that, because I was expecting this to be working. And when I repaint, normally it should. For the what? The location for the code. You mean the fact that this is up and the other one is down? No, it doesn't make a difference. As long as it's available, it's fine. I can just put it up and down. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, when you created this inner classes, they have to be somewhere inside this. But whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It can be here or anywhere. I can just take this and cut it and put it here if I want to. That's fine. Or no, put it in the button. As long as it's inside the class, that's what's important. It shows like this is now, this one is a class inside of this class. But I prefer to keep it where it was. Now I think there's something about something else. Now what I'd like to do, I'd like to see every time this is going to be called, I'd like to see the X and Y, the values of those X and Y. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say this X equal, and then put X, and then put a space, and then Y equal, and then put Y. Why I'm doing this, because once I run here, you're going to see, okay, it shows now this is X, this is Y. Now if I click on this one, you see what happens? it works now every time. It works now. It works every time it goes and execute this again. But let me tell you something interesting. Now, where am I going to be? Yeah, here. If I remove this repaint and click here, and if I click next to the right, you see it doesn't add more. Let me just do it again. With the repaint on, it just keeps adding. That means it repaints every time it keeps executing. But if I remove it, it stops executing. Okay, which means now this repaint is doing something. But there's also a difference. I think last time I showed you this and I thought it wouldn't work. I think now it should work, because if I click, you see it just repaints. Now the problem, I just realized it, but I don't know if you did as well. But there's a problem with the way I'm doing things. Now I put x to be increased by 10, right? Then when I come back by calling this repaint, I'm going to execute this again. But when I'm executing this again, I forget what was there before, and then I calculate again what should be the position of the x based on the size of this, and that, and that's creating a problem. So now this is always going to be changed to be this value, which is the value that we've seen all the time.
So we should write here x equal x.
So I need to move these from here, because if I put them here, if I leave them there, it's going to be doing the same thing again. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this from here and put them back where they should have been, which is in the constructor, because I'd like just to initialize them with this. However, I'm not going to put this dot get size get width, because my problem is at the beginning it has the size of 0 and 0. That's why it has a big problem. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to calculate I'm going to get it the width. Maybe put this at first. Width and height. This is going to set the, I will take these, instead of me getting them from here, I'm going to get them from outside. So which means when I'm going to create this, I need to specify, okay, what's the size of this panel? And the advantage of doing it this way is well, not a good thing, I think, because I can just specify the size myself, but I don't want to specify the size. I would like to initialize with some kind of a size of my own. But what kind of size do I would like to get? I think the constructor is not a good.
Can you use the size related
Hmm?
size related size location?
No, this is about the location. The set location relative to is about where it should show. But this works with frames, not with the panels.
Return it to the paint, but in the method fill over, instead of y and x, can you get y and get x? Because then you change the value.
Get?
Yeah. Make a getter for x and y.
Well, if I get a getter, the only thing that I can benefit from is that if I'm outside of this class, I'll be able to get them. But if I'm inside here, if you use get,
But you change the value, that's what I mean. Because when you change the value outside, you get it inside. Because inside you'll get it.
so you'd like to have some kind of a value here, like get here? Okay.
What I mean is x and y, we return them back to the paint, and in the method fill over we use get x and get y, because we changed it in the.
But where are you going to get it from? Because get x, you're getting it from this one. This you have another. You should have a getter, right? So this is going to return what? Get x. The content of what? This variable. But we're still having the same problem. Now the problem is about how to initialize the variable with the size of the frame, but we don't know the size of the frame the first time, because we basically don't know. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to simplify this. I'm going to set the size myself to some kind of value. Let's say 700 by 700. How about that? Now, if it's 700 by 700, it's not going to be here, but because this can zoom out, it's going to do something. But I'd like to change that. Before doing this, I'm just putting some values here to initialize them, but actually it's not the correct thing to do. I'm going to change those to something once I initialize the panel, and the panel once it's added inside here. Now at this time, after I add it, it will just fill the whole place that is available for it. Now at this time I know what's the size is going to be, and this is where I'm going to so this is the time when I should just set the sizes to the height and width. And you know what, I'm going just to maybe, instead of doing this the way I mentioned, I'm just going to put this width and height like these. This is variables, but the problem is that the first time I'm going just to put them as any value, because I don't know what kind of value it should be. So the first time I don't know what kind of what is it going to be. So I'm going to do this. Width and height is going to be 700 or 500, whatever. Then when I run it, it's just going to start with being 500. But see, this is not the number I want. But I can change it now, because I can do something else, which is this x and y. Instead of being this, I'm going to call them into some kind of calculate position. And this calculate position is just a method that I created, so I can call it many times. Void and calculate position, and inside I'm going to do this. Okay, why am I doing this way? Well, the offset, again, I might need it to be also available everywhere, so I don't have to calculate it all the time. I'm just declaring them as an instance variable as well, because I just want it to be used here every time I'm going to calculate that and use it. Now the thing is, the first time the height and weight will have some kind of value. Actually I can put it as 0, it doesn't matter. But if I put it as 0, you can see it's going to show up the place where it was supposed to show up last time. So this confirms that the first time when we designed it, it just goes to the 0, 0, and that's why we don't have it. But what I'd like to show is this. After I put it inside this frame at the center, it will just fill up the whole center. So now the size will have changed, and this, after doing this, the width is going to be this is the variable, is going to be this mp get drawing dot get size dot width. And this one, I'm going to do the same thing with the height dot get size dot height. Okay, what am I doing here? Here I'm asking, look, now after I added the panel to the center of the frame, get its size, and from the size give me the width, and that width put it in this variable width that I used inside this class here. Now this variable width that I put, it was 0 because of the constructor, but then now every time I'm going to do this calculate position, which is allowing us to calculate now the x is going to be at the right position. And you know what, this calculate position, I'm going to use it here before, no, not here. If I do it here, it's going to always be called. I'm going to call it later here, mp dot panel dot calculate position. Now this calculate position, what it is going to do, is going to set the x and y to be at the middle of my screen, of my panel, And then by the time when I'm going to call this to run, no, it did not show up. Oh yeah, I forgot. Because once I add it, I need to repaint. No? Okay, it's kind of weird. I was expecting the repaint to show up. Okay, now I'm doing something that is not working the way I expect it to be working. Okay. So it just ended up making things too complicated. What do you mean? The size of the circle. Okay. The size of the circle, it will be for the full screen. I don't get your... Right now? Okay. No. Well, you can see it's here. Why is it here? Because I removed everything. Now, when it draws, look at what is x and y. Both of them are 0. Why? Because I declared these to be instance variables. They have not been initialized. By default, instance variables that are primitive data types are going to be 0. So by default, x and y is on 0. And when I'm drawing x and y in 0. And notice that this 0 is going to be the top left corner of my frame. That's why this top left corner is 0. And then it draws there, from there, it draws this circle. Inside the imaginary, square there, yes.
We use get out in the method and the actual listen up to change the value of x or y. Would that make it better on here?
The getter of what?
X and y.
Well, I can have access to them without the need of a getter. So I can access the whole private variable myself. Now by clicking this here, now let's see. If I run a click on write, it moves. Now the only problem is that it's not in the center. That's my only problem. That's what I was trying to get it done. Now, if I wanted to be moved to the center, I just need to put the values here. At the beginning, the first time, I need to initialize them with some values that are going to be the center. Now, to stop wasting our time, remember the center was something like 200 and y was, I don't know, 170. I don't remember exactly what were the numbers. But if I put like this to be like the default value, by default it's going to start towards somewhere here. And then if I click move up, move right, it's just going to move them to the right direction. All this discussion that I was trying to do, I was trying to not put my numbers here myself, but get them from the default the default width, the dimension, the size that when it's added to the frame that it takes. Now there's some other thing that I can do. I can get the size at a specific time when something is resized, but I don't want to make things too much complicated. But let's say I'm putting something, let's say like this, I don't know, 150, just to put it back up a little bit, something like this. This is roughly the center. I don't care now about this, so we don't waste time trying just to center it in a way that is going to take us more time. But the main thing is that I want it to go right. But if it goes right, you see, well, it keeps going right because actually, I can just keep going kind of far right. Okay, now I moved it by 10. What if I want to move it by smaller number of movements or whatever? Or what if I'd like to show it moving like in an animation that keeps moving? That's something we're going to have a look at later on. But let's keep the buttons working fine, and then we're going to improve this to make it some kind of animated moving, if we can. we'll see that, inshallah. So this is what it takes to move to the right. Now, to make it all the same, and I would like to make it like controllable, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a private final int that I'm going to go move it to like call it speed. This speed for us is 10, but if I would like to change it, I'm just going to change it here, and then the speed is going to be changed there. It's final because I don't want I don't want it to be changed, and this is going to be by my paint. Hold on, my panel. I want to make it static. Why static? Because I just would like to do something like this. Dot speed. So I'm just trying to show you different ways how to do things. Basically, just to have some apply different things that we've seen before. Yes. If you use speed, it's not going to be known because speed is not declared in this class movable. It's declared inside the subclass of the class. I can have access to it, but I need just to mention the class name. So now what if I'd like to do the bottom left, sorry. So this was right. For the left, should be a minus. And for the up, it should be the y that is going to be minus, because up means the y is going to go up, so I need to reduce the y. So this is for the button up, and for the button down is the y that should be plus. I just need not to forget this is the button down. Now if I run, this is right, up, down, left. So it seems to be working all the buttons at once. Okay? So to summarize what we did. Now we had a big discussion that just trying to get this set it. But remember that we needed the x and y to be being able to be changed from outside, so I put them in an instance variable here, and then I can access those variables, and every time I access those variables I change them to something that I want, I just repaint. Now repaint means, okay, draw the components again. Repaint will force the call of this paint again, so we call this method again. Once it calls it, now the x and y's have changed, so it will just paint it again with a new position, and this is done every time. Now let's do something also interesting. What if I click on move right, instead of being like this move by 10 thing, it moves one by one until it reaches 10, but just slowly. But maybe 10 is kind of small. I'm going to change the speed maybe to make it 20, so it will be very clearly, you can see it moving. Even 20 is not really. Let's make it 25. Now what I'd like to do is move it, okay, faster. It moves faster. But I'd like to do it like to improve this thing. First of all, I don't like the way it is, because you see this code over here, this and repaint, this and repaint, this and repaint. I'm going to do it differently. How different is differently? I'm just going to create some kind of methods, like private, or maybe I want them to be public, that's fine. Public void move up. and I'm just going to put the code to allow it to move up. If I want the code to move up, what I should do is the x should be x plus the speed. And then repaint. And if I move up, I'm going to do something with move down. And this is going to be like this. Why am I doing this? Because what I can do now, just from here, instead of doing this, I'm just going to call, I'm moving right. Okay, I did not do move right yet. Let me do it later. Yes?
Move up should be minus speed.
Move up, yeah, it should be minus and the y. And y and a plus. And then we have the move right, or this is left, which is the x and minus, and move right, x and positive. And then it's going to repaint, so it's going to call to repaint itself. Now every time I'm just going to call move, this one move right, so move right. The other one is move left, and then this is move up, and move down. So now if I run this, I hope that this is going to work the same way it does, except now I put it here. The code is just call this method, and then the method here is doing the job. Why am I putting it this here? Because I would like to make it a little bit fancy. I would like to, instead of moving it the speed, the whole 25 at once, I would like to move it like 5 at a time, or maybe 10. I'm going to make something like create like as if it's moving as an animation, instead of jumping step by step, like make it really move. And to do that, all I need to do is, instead of subtract, for example, move up, or let's start with the right. Instead of from going like add 50 at once, I'd like to add one by one. And I'm going to do a for loop, yeah. So what I'm going to do, for example, I'm going to replace this line of here down there with the for loop where x, where I, is it I? Well, it doesn't matter, with speed. Yeah, speed. This is like it's going to repeat this number of times. Now speed, how many times it is? 50. So it's going to repeat 50 times from 0 to until 49. It will repeat. What is it going to do? X plus plus. And then I'm going to repaint. And then I don't need this. So which means now what it's going to do, it's going to just increase by 1. It's kind of a lot. It's going to take 50 times. Let's see the result. Huh. A loop of 50 times went so quick as if there was no loop. I need to slow it down to be able to see it. And that's what I'd like to, the new thing that I'd like to show you, is that before this, how can I slow this down? Well, I can just make the computer work, or there's something called sleep. Now this sleep means it's a method that makes the computer just relax for some time, but there's something that needs to be done with, which is the topic that we're going to be talking about it later on, is that it needs to deal with exceptions, because this sleep can raise some kind of exceptions. And to deal with those exceptions, now I'm just going to have two options: a throw clause or surround statement with try catch. And now the introduction of this, I'm going to put a try catch and just leave it as it is for now. But the main thing is just I'd like it to sleep. and we'd like to see if this is going to work. Sleep 1000 means what? Sleep 1 second. 1000 means 1 second. If I want it to be less time, I will make it like half of a second and make it 500. More than 1 second, well, I just need to multiply the number of seconds by 1000. Now let's see what this is going to do. If I click on this, now it's stuck. There's a loop and it sleeps, and there's another loop. It's going to wait 50 seconds before I can see something, and at the end I'm not seeing things immediately after they stopped. So this thing here did not work as I expected. So now it's some kind of very long loop that I don't want to wait. So this sleep thing, I was thinking maybe it will be fancy and you'll like it, but no, not really. So anyways, this speed here, I'm just going to postpone it to maybe later. So I don't want to, because it will take me some time before I can find out some ways how to bypass that. So you know what, I'm just going to bring back this to this move right to be like this with the repaint, and to give you some opportunity so you can practice those, because there's been so many things now that I have done. Now the answer to this is, okay, now it's moving to the right, to the left. Or maybe one last thing before I can let you practice, so you can practice some other things as well, is that what if I'd like to have this also be using the keyboard? If I move it from the arrows from the keyboard, it will just move as well. Now it's kind of very easy. If I'd like it to do something in the keyboard, I just need to make the frame implements a key listener. Now what is the key listener? Let me just remove this. A key listener is an interface that has several methods, like the mouse listener that has different methods for mouse in, mouse out, or pressed, and same thing. Now it has the same thing here with key typed, key pressed, key released. Now I don't need these ones, so I'm just going to leave them empty. But this one I would like to implement that when the key is typed, I would like to do something. Now a key is typed means some key on the keyboard was typed. But which one? I don't know. So I need to use this to know which one I typed. With this key event, e dot, I have some other things which is going to give me, okay, what is the code of that key? Because every key has a code, and then I would like to compare that code to something. So to compare to what? Now key events dot, the virtual key is the code for every key here, and I would like to, if the code is up, which this means this row up was pressed, I'm going to move up. But I don't have move up here. I need to call this MP drawing panel does move up. Move up. So what I'm doing here is that I just need to get the code from this key event, this E. This is the parameter. There was a key that was pressed. Which one? The code of it is here. Now, in order to do something, I need to compare. Is it with this key event? Is it equal to this code? If it's equal to this code, that means it went up. So I'm going to go up, and I'm moving up. And I'm going to do some else if the key is down, I'm going to move down. Now this is even better when you see that I can just call the method, so I don't have to put the same code, copy and paste again. And the same thing now, copy and paste, else if the key is right or left. Yes.
What's the V key?
V key, virtual key. This is how they put the codes. Basically these are numbers, you see. Every key has a number, and then this key code gives me a number. And if I'd like to maybe see it, maybe I could just put some systems out of print line, e.get key code. And you know what? I'm just going to remove these for now. Just put them in as comment. So I just would like to see the key code that was pressed. Now, if I press here, I'm going to see here some key code. But as you can see, nothing happens because I need to do some two things. First of all, in the constructor, I need to add key listener to be this. And that's not enough. I need to set focusable or to be true, which means that I want the focus to be on the frame. Now notice this is movable. This is movable, which is the frame. Hold on, there's too many things now. It becomes really. So this is the movable, which is a frame. Now this frame, it has to have the focus, because if I don't have the focus, even if I had the action listener, let me just show you that. If I remove this and then run, even if I add the key listener, press, nothing happens. But once I put this focus to be true, set focusable true, now whatever I type, these are the codes that I have. But these are kind of weird codes though. It's always 0. But it's whenever I pressed something, there was a code. But why is it 0? That's another story. We'll try to find out. Now once something is typed, actually it is pressed, this is the one I want. Actually, this is the one I want. When I press on something, I need to do the action. So now let's just run it again. And when I press on something, here it is. Now I have different numbers. Which means now every key has a different special code. And that's the code of that key that I press. Now it doesn't make any sense. I don't want to memorize these. But I can just now use this code. Now once I get the code, I just compare it to another code of some key that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the key up. So I have to use this V key, the virtual key, up. And if it's up, I'm moving up. Now let's try that. And if I'm going into up, as you can see, I'm moving with the. Let me zoom out, and then so it can see a bigger. Okay. What I can do is just some fun. It's just an idea that I just got now. Every time I move, I'd like to increase the size of my circle. How about that? Just to make the circle becomes big. It's like, you know, this game Snake. You remember? Maybe you're not the generation of that Snake. There's like in the mobile phones at the time, they have like the new games that started. Is a snake that starts small, and then every time it eats something, it becomes longer. You probably know that. Maybe. Okay. You do? All of you? I'm impressed. Okay, because it's kind of an old game. So you're getting old. All right. I'm sorry?
Only game with dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was the only game in Nokia. Yeah, right. So we're going to do something similar. Is that instead of this is the size of the circle, we're just going to make it just increment. Every time we move, we increment, and then we repaint. I mean, this is just silly, but just to have some change in the graphical user interface. Now let's have a look at this. Now it doesn't grow much faster because I increase only by 1, but it's still, you see, it's getting bigger. But I forgot, when I click on left, it just goes down. I forgot to change it. So as you can see, it becomes bigger anyways. Okay, when it's left, yeah, in the if up there. When it's left, I need to move left. And now, if I run, this is going to be so it gets bigger and bigger as I move. Whatever. And that's how you can. It also gets bigger also when I move, because I'm just calling the same method, so it just does the same thing. That's why it's an advantage to call the methods. Now we did a lot of things. Let's try to summarize. Okay. Now, first of all, the paint is the main thing that draws things. Now, what we did is that we drew like a circle. We had some problems, you remember, with trying to find where to put that circle. So that's why we initialized that with some kind of like values that makes it in the center. It doesn't matter because we don't want to focus on that. If you really would like to make it centered, there's a couple of things we need to do, but I don't want to spend time trying to investigate that. Now, every time we move, I just put these methods that are going to change the y or x based on where are we moving, move right or left, and this is kind of optional. But the most important part after you change your x and y's is not to forget to repaint, because if you don't repaint, it's not going to show up the changes that were done. It's not going to call this method paint and draw it again. And every time the method paint is called, it just it's like it erases and draws again from scratch. So it erases what was there before, and then put the color, and then change the color of the writing, and then it fills again. So this is how it works. And then what we did, we just added now these actions to the button by just calling the methods move right, move left, etc. from that panel. But the new thing about the key listener is that the frame is a key listener, and by the key listener we need just to have either the key press or key release. Both of these are going to be fine with us. And then as soon as it's pressed, you can just do something. But because we have many keys that we would like to capture, I'm just going to do, like, if I press on the left, I'm going left. If I press on up, I go up. But how do I know if I'm going up or left or whatever? I use this value. I compare this, that gives me a number, to this other number. And if it's the same, it does something. Now, I just had an idea, since we're making our size of the screen big. Now, what if I'd like, for example, if I press on the else if I press on any other key, anything else was going to reset the size of the. If I press anything else, I'm going to set the size of what? This dot. What is the okay, so it's join the size of the circle to be 100. And then, of course, as soon as I change something, I'd like to have to repaint it. So I need to repaint. Now what happens now, if I keep moving up and down, whatever, it just keeps getting bigger. And then, okay, I don't know what size is this, but it's definitely more than 100. Now, if I press on any key, it's back to 100. And then it's going to increase again. And then any key, back to 100. If I want a special key, for example, just the space, well, again, you just need to do something like this. Else if, and then put that the key code should be equal to space. So how can I know it's a space? It's a space of v key and then underscore, and then look for space, and then here it is. There's the code of the space, and this is the code of the space. Now if I run, and then increase the size a bit, and then if I type anything else, nothing works. But if I press a space, it just go back to. So you can just get whatever you would like to do. Is that okay? Yes.